Bhagavad Gita. See it. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you very much. Very glad to see everybody with us this morning in the temple room, and probably a few who are outside listening in by internet. Very pleased to have you with us this morning. For those of you who might not know me, my name is Rupanugadas. I'm a disciple of His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, grand disciple of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada. This morning, if you have your phones with you and you can get the internet, we're going to be reading from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12, text number 1. But first of all, we'll have an invocation to the Supreme Lord. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Thank you. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Nitai Gaura Premananda Hari Hari Bho Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Charja Hasto Tadasata Shri Srimad His Divine Loving Grace of Harya Chananavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Charja Hasto Tadasata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki, ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki, ISKCON Guru Parampara Ki, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki, Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhana Ki Shri Vrindavandam Ki Shri Mathura Ram Ki Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Shri Shri Radha Kalachanji Dham Ki Ganga Devi Ki Jamuna Mai Ki Tulsi Devi Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Brihad Madanga Transcendental Book and Transcendental Prasadam Distribution Ki Nitai Gaura Premananda All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminti Namanai. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurabhati Pacharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Pasatyadeshitani. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Yasan Tato Jayamudira Nasta Presha Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatitamashloke Bhakti Bhavarinaistaki Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Grantara Sri Great Sri Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premananda Hari Hari Bo. Both our Bhagavad Gita and our Srimad Bhagavatam are written down by the same personality, Srila Krishna Dvaipayan Vyasadeva. So we offer our humble obeisances to His divine grace, Srila Vyasadeva. So if you have your telephones or you have a book, those of you who are listening in from home, we're very happy that you're with us this morning. We know that you're there, and we know that you're listening and you're getting your batteries charged, getting ready for the week. So it's a pleasure that you're with us. If you will, repeat after me. Arjuna Huvacha Evam Satata Yuktaye Bhaktas Tvam Parayupasyate Ye Chap. We have a lighting problem here. Yeah. All right, I'll try that. And the print is pretty small in this book. So third line. Ye chapyaksharam avyaktam tesham ke yoga vitama Arjuna Huvacha Evam Satata Yuktaye Bhaktastvam Paryupasate Ye Chapatyaksharam. Let's try that again. Ye Chapyaksharam Avyaktam Tesham Ke Yoga Vitama. Somebody else chant, please. Arjuna Vacha Evam Satata Yuktaye Bhaktastvam Paryupasyate Ye Chapatyaksharam Avyaktam Tesham Ke Yoga Vitama. Arjuna Vacha Evam satata yuktaye bhaktas tvam paryupasate ye cha pyaksharam yaktam desham ke yoga vitama Guru Kulis. Want to try? Arjuna Uvacha Evam Satata Yuktaye Bhaktas Tvam Paryupasate Ye Chapatam Desham Ke Yoga Vitamam. Word for word translations. Arjuna Uvacha. Arjuna said, Evam, thus, satata, always, yukta, engaged, yea, those who, bhakta, devotees, tvam, you, paryupasate, properly worship, yea, those who, cha, also, api, again, aksaram, beyond the senses, avyaktam, the unmanifested, tesam, of them, ke, who, yoga vitama, the most perfect in knowledge of yoga. And translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki. Arjuna inquired, which are considered to be more perfect? Those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? Repeat, please. Arjuna inquired, which are considered to be more perfect? Those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? And purport by His Divine Grace. Krishna has now explained about the personal, the impersonal, the universal, and has described all kinds of devotees and yogis. Generally, the transcendentalists can be divided into two classes. One is the impersonalist, and the other is the personalist. The personalist devotee engages himself with all energy in the service of the Supreme Lord. The impersonalist also engages himself, not directly in the service of Krishna, but in meditation on the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested. I'm going to do something that might not be authorized, but I'm going to skip over in the purport. And I'm going to go to the third paragraph on the next page, which begins, nevertheless, those who are not attached to the personal form of Krishna, nevertheless, there are those who are not attached to the personal form of Krishna. They are so firmly detached that even in the preparation of commentaries to Bhagavad Gita, they want to distract other people from Krishna and transfer all devotion to the impersonal Brahma Jyoti. They prefer to meditate on the impersonal form of the Absolute Truth, which is beyond the reach of the senses and is not manifest. And let's read a little bit more. And so factually, there are two classes of transcendentalists. Now Arjuna is trying to settle the question of which process is easier and which of the classes is the most perfect. In other words, he is clarifying his own position because he is attached to the personal form of Krishna. He is not attached to the impersonal Brahman. He wants to know whether his position is secure. The impersonal manifestation either in this material world or in the spiritual world of the Supreme Lord, is a problem for meditation. That's the impersonal manifestation. Actually, one cannot perfectly conceive of the impersonal feature of the absolute truth. So, therefore, Arjuna wants to say, what is the use of such a waste of time? Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Sri Chaitanya Madhavishtam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaya Dati Swavarantikam Vande Ham Shri Guru Shri Dyutta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana Raganatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Savadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shri Vichakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karana Sando Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Taptakan Chana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavadeshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, Ki Jai. So we've been talking about two qualities, two different kinds of transcendentalists. One is the personalist and one is the impersonalist. And Prabhupada gave us the second mantra to chant when we chant his pranam mantra. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nivashesha Shunyavadi Pastyatadesha. So he's here, he came to this material world to try to help eliminate impersonalism and voidism, which are rampant in our society today. So I would like to talk a little bit about an idea that I take it that the Supreme Lord gave me during my meditations last night, this morning, and that is comparing impersonalism to compassion. Impersonalism compared to compassion. So many of us who come to Krishna consciousness for the first time, we become aware of impersonalism, and there's probably not much likelihood that we really knew too much about this word before we came and began reading Prabhupada's books. But we can just look around us and perceive, in other words, become aware of the impersonalism in our society. So I've listed some examples here, and one of those is receiving calls from marketers or telemarketers. And so one thing that I recognize and I don't really care so much for is when somebody who doesn't know me or know anything about me calls me by name when they talk to me on the phone and calls me by my first name. And what bothers me even more is that they call me by my given first name, which happens to be Ronald, which sounds a little formal. And because coming up, I used the name Ron. So whenever I hear somebody address me like that, or whenever a younger person, for example, going to a doctor's office, going to the dentist, or going someplace, somebody, when it comes your turn, they come out and they say your name. And instead of using Mr. or Miss, they will use sometimes my first name. And that bothers me because a lot of times that person is younger than 30 years old. And to me, it's a sign of disrespect. In other words, it's not showing proper etiquette. So I wonder about such a person, what kind of household they grew up in, that they did not learn to speak respectfully to not only to persons who are older physically than them, but a person who is in a more advanced position. For example, I worked in a number of jobs in which the person who was my direct supervisor was younger than I. And to me, I would prefer to call that person by Mr. or Miss. But according to whatever the situation is in that particular environment, I might also get used to calling the person by the first name. But it's sometimes hard for me to go from saying Mr. Plemons to Jim. That happened to be one of the first bosses after I got out of school and went to work with Westinghouse Electric Corporation. So calling, greeting a person by their name is generally, we have to be a little careful about that. But if it's someone that we're familiar with, or at least we know their first name and we know that they don't mind being called by their first name, to greet them without using their name is not good etiquette either. Because I heard it said one time that one of the most pleasing sounds a person can hear is that of his own name. And when somebody bothers to call you by your name, then even if it's a friend of yours, then it's very pleasing to hear. And we were talking about the etiquette that a person grew up with. If a young man or a young woman addresses you as yes, sir, yes, ma'am, then that also is quite pleasing to hear. So these are some signs then of receiving good etiquette training. Sometimes when I'm in line at a grocery store, the person who is checking me out generally has been working for some period of time, and I can imagine that he or she is probably getting pretty tired, especially standing on their feet for a long period of time. So for me, not to say anything personal to that person is like showing a sign of disrespect or accepting that person as something other than a person that is worthy of my respect and my attention. So this is a sign. This is a sign also of impersonalism, not looking at another person as a person, but looking at them as just somebody who is getting paid to do the job. And why do I have to spend any time talking to the person? I like to comment on a person who happens to be checking me out, whether it's because of the way he or she fixes her hair or the way his beard looks. If it looks nice, I like to make comment. Or the clothes that they're wearing, if there's something special about them, if that person is wearing a pendant or some kind of a necklace or something, or has a really nice ring on her hands, then I like to make a note of it, because not to do that is saying, I don't care about you. All I want to do is check out the stuff that I bought and get the heck out of here, because I waited in line 15 minutes to get up here and now I'm ready to go. But instead of doing that, if we stop for a moment and realize that this person has been waiting there at that counter, at that checkout stand, for a lot more than 15 minutes. And he or she is likely to be tired or maybe hungry. Never know when a person's going to have had a rough morning, and when they finally get out of the house, they don't feel like really communicating so much with anyone. So if you just take the time then and give them a little attention, sometimes that makes a huge difference in a person's attitude for the next period of time. maybe for the rest of their shift or for the next hour or something like that. Hey, somebody recognized that I'm here and that I'm working hard and I'm serving them. They recognize that, and that's pretty nice. How about chanting? How about when we're chanting our japa in the morning or whenever we get around to it in the day, and we go for maybe 20, 30 minutes and realize that I've been thinking about anything and everything other than the holy names that I'm chanting. I'm not thinking about that beautiful person whose name is Krishna or that beautiful other boy named Rama. Uh, I'm not thinking about that beautiful lady known as Radharani. Hare, the word Hare refers to Srimati Radharani. So then I have to, well, we have to do what Krishna suggests to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, and that is when the mind wanders away, you have to bring it back under the control of the self. And so to me, it seems like then this is an example of impersonalism. That is repeating a person's name. Well, I'll tell you another example that was given about this is that if I invite Nandabraj to come over to my house, and he comes in and sits down, and I've got the television on, and instead of paying any attention to him, I'm just watching what's going on the television. Or I'm working on something on my computer, and I go ahead and continue typing. Now, you see doctors doing this sometimes when you go for a visit. You're still talking to them, and they're typing. Well, they've got the uncanny ability to hear what you're saying. But, you know, for most of us, if we give our attention to something other than that person who is sitting there right beside us, then how's that person going to feel? I can imagine waiting about 2 minutes and then getting up and excusing himself. And so that's, you know, when we chant without thinking about Krishna, why should we think that Krishna's paying any attention to us if we're not paying any attention to him? So treating other living entities with concern is a sign of personalism. And I'm not talking about just other human beings. I'm talking about animals and trees, because the living entity is in those bodies. And so if we don't show any concern at all for others, then that's a pretty definite sign that we haven't quite figured out that our attitude is one of very much an impersonalistic nature. So to ask for the names of others, as we mentioned, if it's somebody that we don't know or we've forgotten their name, quite often that's the way it is with me around here, because my memory is not quite as sharp as it was 60 years ago. Of course, you might wonder, you're really only 60, Rupanuga? No, but time will take away your memory, and it causes you then not to speak to another person by his or her name. So sometimes I just have to say Prabhu or Mataji or something like that. But I don't feel as good about that as I do about calling that person by his or her name. So commenting on details of other people, if you're really interested, I mentioned in a message that I sent to Nandabraj Prabhu last night, a book that I read many, many years ago. This was like in 1963, 64. By that time, I was out of school, working in my first job, and renting a room in a boarding house. And that room that I was renting happened to be an attic room, an attic bedroom. This was in Alabama, southern Alabama. No air conditioning at that time, and you were lucky if you had a little oscillating fan to blow some air on you. And you can imagine what an attic bedroom might have been. Anyhow, everybody was living like that, so I didn't pay it much attention. But there were a lot of books that the old couple had put up there, the ones that I was renting from. And one of them was by an author by the name of Dale Carnegie. Now, some of you are familiar with the name Andrew Carnegie, who was the great steel magnate in this country. Dale Carnegie, however, wrote this little book, and it was called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it's one of the most significant little books that I have ever read in my lifetime. It's just full of personal examples that Mr. Carnegie had put in this book. And some of them I still remember to this day. So one of the comments he made is that if you want to become known as a good conversationalist, and you sit down with another person, one way to do that is to start asking questions of that person and getting that person to respond to you and tell you about himself or herself and the life that they've lived and what they've experienced and such as that. And he said he did that one time, and he asked questions and listened for about 2 hours. And later on, he found out that this person had referred to him to someone else, and then it got back to the speaker. It had referred to him as one of the best conversationalists I've ever known. And all he had done was ask questions. So people are really interested, aren't they, in telling you something about their lives. Of course, there might be some difficult things that they would prefer to avoid. And so you learn as a conversationalist not to press into those areas that you're finding some reluctance by that person, but to ask them questions. This is a very thoughtful thing to do, and it shows respect for them, even though they might be as ordinary as dirt, just like you are, and you're just giving them some appreciation and some acknowledgement for what they have been through, because everybody lives a different kind of life. And when I was teaching, college freshmen and sophomores about writing essays, one of the things that I tried to get them to do in the beginning was to include as much of their lives in the essay that I was asking them to write as they could. Tell about something that has happened to you. Tell about somebody else that is personal. Because we find, do we not, when we're in the temple room and we're just listening to straight philosophy, sometimes the tendency is to nod off. And I do it regularly. So I find it's helpful to be doing something else, like eating something at home if I'm listening to one of the classes that's given here in the temple. But the moment that person who is presenting a topic begins to talk about something that has occurred in his or her own lifetime, immediately it's got my attention. Otherwise, it's just like going to one of these big organizations, like my spiritual master used to go to like an international society for religious leaders or something like that. And the strange thing was that people got up there and read something that they had prepared and had it in writing. And they just read everything that was on. And when they were done, that was it. But can you imagine how long a person could listen to someone read like that, especially during a time when maybe 8 or 10 people got up and presented a paper that they had written? You can imagine how long a person's attention would be able to stick with something like that. But you start talking about something that a person has done in his lifetime, and then it's pretty exciting. And if you're talking with another person, you let that person do the talking. Now, some people would say, but it seems kind of made up, or it seems like you're not really sincere when you're just asking questions to get that person to talk. And that's true. That's kind of like using there's a term that we use, and that is a phony. A phony, a person who appears to be interested in you, but actually he's just asking questions to get you to talk. And you can imagine that celebrities and political people, they have this happen all the time. That people are not really interested in themselves, but rather in the exciting things that they've done in their lifetimes. And that may be all right, but eventually a person can tell when another. One person said, "You can tell a phony a mile off." So if someone is not sincere when they're asking you questions, you begin to feel it. And the same thing happens with the other person when you're asking questions and you're not that interested really in that person's life. They can feel that there's something like that's impersonalism. We're not really thinking about that person as an individual who is important and who counts, especially in our own lives. That we just don't see them. So there are ways that we can do that. We can just talk about it, act helpfully in some way. That person's going through some difficult times. The typical thing for us to say is, "Hey, if there's anything I can do, let me know." But a person who's really sincere will will find out what that individual needs. If it's some kind of food, or if it's some reference books, or if it's a video of something that maybe they mentioned and they don't have, that's an opportunity for you just to do something without first being asked to do it. In other words, we don't wait around for people to call us and say, "Hey, I need," because people are really reluctant to do that. They don't feel like it's right to do that. So it's better to just do something for that person that you feel pretty certain. And if you don't know the person well enough, then ask someone else. What does this person need? For example, if it's an older person and you happen to know that person's kids, who are maybe at the same age as you are, you can ask them, "What can I do for your mom or your dad? I know that they're struggling right now, but perhaps they lost, a partner." So commiserating also with someone without advising them. In other words, just sitting and talking with someone and acting as the listener. I'm just listening to you. I'm not sitting there waiting for you to stop for a moment so I can tell you what you need to do. So that again is something that we learn in our day-to-day conversations, interactions with other people. So if we really learn how to show compassion to people, we will get some results for that. If we show compassion, just like Srila Prabhupada, who has shown more compassion to us than Srila Prabhupada, or maybe our own spiritual master, if we never got to spend much time with Srila Prabhupada, we could listen to what that person has to say, and in many cases, our own spiritual master has been the most significant personality in our entire lives. So what can happen if? What are the desirable results that come from showing compassion to other people? Well, just like in our lifetimes, if we listen to somebody who gave us a piece of literature that made a difference in our lives, or who engaged us in performing some activity that was beneficial for the community that you live in, for the group of people that you're with, then that can change a person's attitude toward whatever it is that you might be trying to get that person interested in. If you just listen and let them tell you about their lives and what they're interested in, then there's a much better chance that they're going to listen to you when you start telling them something that might be beneficial for them. For example, if you tell a person, "You're not this body," how many times is a person out there in our society, how many times have they heard that before? And yet when we tell them that, if they're at all intrigued, then there's so much more that we can tell them if we just understand that this is something that will that they can hang on to. Um, Another thing that we can do just by showing compassion is to eliminate confrontations. And who does not have confrontations? Every day you're going to run into somebody whose opinion is different. If you're a parent and you got children, then it happens all the time, every day. That and so we desire to eliminate. So if we show compassion even to our own children and understand maybe they're also having a little bit of a difficult time in their school life, in their social life with their friends, with people they contact online or by telephone, if we just simply show some understanding, and then perhaps we can give them some advice to help them, and this will eliminate some of the confrontations that we have with them and that they have with others. Helping other people open up to new ideas. Sometimes that's one of the biggest benefits that you can give another person, especially if that person has had not as much experience out there in the material world as you have had, and you have learned some things that might be beneficial to them. If you're approaching them not in an attitude of saying, "Hey, just listen to me, will you?" but instead, here's something that might be helpful to you, an idea for you to consider. I'm not asking you to accept it as it is now, but just think about it, and maybe sometimes later. So if you can help others come up with some ideas that maybe they haven't had in the past, then that's a way to help them overcome some of the problems that they have. Introducing concepts of transcendental topics. How many people do you know who are interested in topics that deal with something outside our five senses? Not everybody gets to that point at the same time. For me, it came all the way back from my teenage years and on into my married life, becoming very bored with the situations that I was in. And so I felt a need to encounter something else. And I'd had a few hints from other people that there are other realities going on around us at the same time as our ordinary reality. But we don't have access to them, and we don't know how to gain access to them. So that's something that I really wanted, and so therefore I studied mysticism. I studied several books and people who were supposedly, yogis of some type or other. But I never found anything that I felt was applicable to my own life. We, on the other hand, at this stage in our lives, we have learned something about transcendental mysticism and where it comes from and how it can be accessed. And so this is an opportunity then for us, even if we don't have any, powerful realizations like the sky opening up and a voice coming to us out of the clouds or something. Even if we don't have that kind of experience, still we have the understanding that we can share with other people. What does it take to do that? Compassion. Means that I care more about you than a lot of people would care about you, because you have come within my realm. You're within my, shall I say, aura. Somehow or other, you have come to me, and I have something to give you that I think will be beneficial to you. So if we can actually do that, then we can act as a representative of our spiritual master and the Supreme Lord. And that it would be probably the most desirable result of our showing compassion to other people, to get them to introduce to other persons besides ourselves who are a lot more advanced than we are, and get them introduced to literature that they can read. They don't have to listen to me speak for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or something. they can just take this book home and read it, like that first young man who handed me a book and I gave him a donation and I started away and he said, read the book. So I did that. And then as soon as I got done with that, that was first canto part 3 of the Srimad Bhagavatam. As soon as I got done with that, I was wondering what's happening next. Here, this young man has come on the scene wearing no clothes. He's got a bluish, blackish color, and he's been given the seat of authority in the midst of maybe hundreds of persons who are much older than him, including his own father, who has given him knowledge. And yet, this young man, Shukadeva Goswami, being given a seat of importance in that society. So, if we can introduce other people to Krishna consciousness, to this mysticism, this transcendental mysticism, and take the boredom out of their lives, then what a boon we are to that person. So that's what we're interested in doing, folks. We're interested in getting past this impersonalism that we've grown up with and experienced all our lives, and that we have shown to other people at times. And we want to move into the realm of loving compassion, caring for those other persons, even though we don't know them, we don't know what their nature is or anything about them. Still, if we can do some little something to start them on the path of Krishna consciousness. And book distributors, persons who have been out distributing Srila Prabhupada's books for a goodly portion of their lives, have understood early on that this book has its own volition. Have you ever heard that said before? This book is not just a piece of material with writing on it. It has its own volition, means it can decide into whose hands it's going to come. And so when we're out, when we have the opportunity or make the opportunity to give out a piece of literature to someone, one of the kindest things that we can ever do, because if that person, it is said, Prabhupada said this, even if the person just touches the book, that's the beginning of their spiritual life. If they look at the picture and enjoy one of the pictures in the book, that's the beginning of their spiritual lives. So we know how to do it, and we know what to do, and we know what our duty is now that we've been given this gift. And this is not like other gifts, because if you give another gift away, then you don't have the gift. But with this gift, you can't keep it unless you give it away. And the more you give it away, the more it becomes a real thing to you. Hare Krishna. We shall stop and ask if anyone has any comments now. And Nanda Braj Prabhu is going to be my translator, because I don't hear worth a darn. So, yes, comment. Do we have a working microphone?
Hi, my name is Deidre. My question is, because I came in a little bit late, is you was talking about personalism and impersonalism, and then you said an impersonalism is Brahma.
Okay, let me get a
The
translation.
form of absolute truth.
Is impersonalism a Brahminical thing?
I just wrote down kind of what you wrote. You said personalism is more like a devotee of Krishna. They have a personal relationship with them. They can see. But then when you was talking about impersonalism, I heard you say Brahma. I might have gotten it wrong, and you were saying that they like pray to the absolute truth, but they have no personal relationship with it. Is that what you were saying? Where people go around and they say,
Hang on 1 second. Let me make sure I've got this at your question.
No, I'm referring to what he said. I just wrote it down. That's all. Because I don't even know what Brahma
Okay,
is.
I think
I'm just trying to figure out what it is.
okay, impersonal. Okay, Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita in two different chapters, he talks about his personal nature and his impersonal nature, and he has both.
And
And
that's
that
Krishna, Krishna's nature, right? You're
the
talking about.
the personal nature is actually being with Krishna himself, or talking with Krishna, or praying to Krishna. Yes, that's a sign of personalism. But some people don't prefer that. As Arjun was saying in that 12th chapter, he says he's asking the question, which one is the most effective or the easiest to perform, to worship your impersonal nature or to worship your personal nature? All right, that impersonal nature then is a little bit different. The personal nature is what we like to concentrate on because that deals with Krishna as a person. His impersonal energy is like this whole material world that we find ourselves in, and it is part of his energy. It is one of his energies. Um, Actually, there is no such thing as material world as such, because all of this is coming from Krishna. But Krishna allows part of his energy to be perceived by us because we have our five senses, and that's the way we get most of our knowledge about this world that we're living in. But this is not the superior energy of Krishna. This is an inferior energy, as it is said. Nonetheless, it comes from a spiritual source, so it is actually spiritual. But we call it material because it's with our material eyes, ears, nose, mouth, that we perceive things in this world. For example, right now I'm looking at you, but I'm only looking at the light being reflected off your body. And if I want to know the real you, who is the spirit soul inside that body, then that's when I have to become, I have to be a personalist. Otherwise, I think that what I'm seeing right now with my senses and hearing, that's the kind of the impersonal side of Krishna.
Yeah. Okay, I understand it now. Thank you so much.
Anything else? Thank you. That's a very, very good question. What's
Yeah,
the
because
difference?
you're saying all of it is Krishna. However, to know to have a personal relationship is to understand them. You know, because people go around and they say, you know, I believe in God, but they have they can't tell you who God is or what God is or where it come from. All they say is I believe in God,
All
which
right.
is, you know, which is a good thing. I'm just glad they believe in something. However, you know, it's not personal to where they can say, well, I believe in God, and this is who God is to me. This is what I have experienced. This is what God has shown me. This is what God, etc., 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 versus I just believe in God.
All right, hold on just a minute. There's some. I've been reading in a book by one of our devotees by the name of Dinabandhu Prabhu, who spends a lot of his time in India and around Vrindavan and Govardhan, and he's talking about the different activities of Krishna with his friends. When he's personally present on this planet, he is showing the same kinds of activities that he performs with his friends back in the spiritual world.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And it's so wonderful to read about Krishna, the description of his body, the description of his voice, his interaction with the little girls and the little boys that are his friends, and to know that he is aware of every single movement within this entire material world, not just this one universe, but unlimited numbers of other universes, to know that this is a person who whose energy all of this is made of, and who can control every single thing that goes on. That's one thing. We're in awe.
It's a beautiful thing. Yes, it is.
But when it comes to knowing him as a little boy who runs around in the fields and next to the Yamuna River, yes, all we have pictures like this all in our temple.
That's who that is right there. Is that Lord Krishna as a boy? Oh, okay.
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Yeah, this is of course just a painting. It doesn't really show how beautiful he is.
Yes, of course not.
And how wonderful it is to hear him speaking. But in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, his disciple and his cousin brother, that's the part that Arjuna is playing as the cousin of Krishna.
So is that those two images right there?
This is Krishna and Rama, his Balaram, his brother.
His brother.
Yeah,
Okay, I can't wait to read the stories.
Balaram is the first expansion from Krishna, and Srimati Radharani is also his energy. She's the manifestation of his energy. But they are in control of this entire material world and the spiritual world. What goes on in all those, and we cannot conceive of anyone who has that kind of power, that kind of energy. It's impossible. But we can relate to a little boy who goes around stealing butter from his, people in his village, and peeing on the floor sometimes, and pinching babies to make them fuss. Yeah. So many things that Krishna does in his manifestation of his younger life are very, very attractive, especially to those of us who are parents. We've had our own children, and we know what a joy they can be, and we know how mischievous they can be also.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the question. Anything else? Any other comments that anyone has, please?
Prabhuji, thank you. Such a wonderful class. I was really appreciating this point about how we're in a check stand, and because I was thinking, there's these self-checkouts nowadays, and a self-checkout, you're just there to do your thing, right? Boom, 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 pay, right? And so it's impersonal. There's no personal interaction. And so if we treat our life like that, like other people like that, like you're just a tool for me to get through my life, it's just really so impersonal, so tasteless. But if we spend some time to acknowledge people and talk to them, yeah, sometimes their impersonalism is kind of like, hey, but if we live our life like that, you're a person, you have value, you're more than just a tool, I see you, I hear you, then your life becomes more awake, you become a person. you have life.
There are people out there who are just waiting to have someone treat them as a real live human being. So devotees are very attractive. Then they become very attractive. Not that we're not physically attractive. I'm not physically attractive, but I can become attractive to other people just by being a nice person, a decent human being. And when we add to that, giving them transcendental knowledge, this is something that no one else can do for them.
I was working a couple years ago with this gentleman, and he went out to a restaurant and for lunch. It was lunchtime, and he ordered, and the place that he ordered, it had a building, but all they did was come to the door, and they would hand you your lunch outside the door. And I was like, whoa, this world is coming so impersonal that you can't even eat lunch and sit down in a place or go into the place, at least to the counter. You know, you don't even go to the counter and pick up your stuff. They literally just hand it out the door. Hey, thank you, you know. And so I was thinking, it hit me, I was like, wow, this world is coming so impersonal that's our actually greatest benefit as devotees, because we actually see people, say hi to them, say hello, and just such a small interaction is so, people aren't used to it, right? They're like, whoa, you're so kind, you're saying hello to me. That's like, you know, our simplest, easiest form of preaching is just being actually human beings that are real persons. Wow.
Prabhupada said we have to become conscious before we can become Krishna conscious. Yes, please.
Prabhu, I was really appreciating this the same point, basically, the importance of being personal. And I feel that sometimes it takes an effort to do that, because sometimes we just want to get the job done and we are in a hurry, or we are in our own mind. Our mind is often too powerful. So it sometimes takes an effort, because especially in this community, we have so many people. And to try to have a meaningful interaction and conversation with all of them can take some effort. But I think it's an effort worth cultivating. And then with time, maybe, like I think it is for you, it becomes more natural. And then not doing that is unnatural. So I feel, thank you for sharing all of that today in the class. It was a very interesting take on personalism versus impersonalism, very fresh take, and it was very insightful. Thank you.
It's so nice when we can actually come into the presence of someone else who cares about us. And how often does that happen in the course of a day? So it makes us appreciate this community more than we ever have, when we realize how sweet-natured the people are here. And you're going to hear some fussing from time to time. That's natural. You can't run a business, you can't run any organization without there being different opinions about how things are to be done. But still, if you really care about somebody, then it will show through. All right, thank you all very much for coming and spending some time with us this morning. Those of you still listening in, thank you very much for tuning in this morning to the Bhagavatam class here in Radhakalajanjidam. So now we offer our respectful obeisances to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, who are just like desire trees, who fulfill the desires of everyone, and who are full of compassion for the fallen edition souls. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhya eva cha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Kalachandjidam ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premananda.
swanidhi